suggestion how to handle me, Vernon.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't worship me unless I've earned it.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate any advice you can give me.
Don't talk with your mouth full, Vernon.
I think we're gonna have to get drunk.
I don't get drunk, and I don't care for escorts who do.
You're just gonna have to trust me about this one thing. You need a lot of drinks. Terms of endearment.
Hey there, and welcome to Dave's Movie Diary. You know, I'm really starting to doubt my memory. Look, I am getting old, no doubt about it. And from doing this pod now for around 50 episodes, I've realised that a lot of these films that I thought I'd seen and kind of knew well, I didn't actually know at all or very well, even if I've seen them. And Terms of Endearment from 1983, I think sadly is another one where I've got a distorted view or an incorrect idea of this film. So I'm really glad that I checked it out last night. And I reckon if I still don't know if I saw it or not back in the day. If I did, it would have just been purely to tick it off the list in terms of Jack Nicholson films, because I was and remain a massive fan of Jack Nicholson. He's one of my all-time favourite movie stars and actors. So I might have tuned into those parts of the film and kind of zoned out for the rest of it. That's probably what happened. But anyway, I watched it last night, rewatched it potentially. I'll never really know. So my history with this is that I've always known that it's well regarded, and I know that it was a very successful film back in its day, and I obviously know that Jack Nicholson won the Best Supporting Oscar for it in '83. And it was his second Oscar after Cuckoo's Nest. And I know that, you know, I knew roughly what it was about, I thought. And I was right for part of that. But anyway, what I got from this rewatch was a whole lot more. What's it about? Well, at its core, the film follows a few characters over quite a long time. It felt like I don't know, 10 or 12 years approximately. But chiefly it focuses on the relationship between a mother and a daughter. The mother's played by Shirley MacLaine, and she's a real iconoclast. She is her own woman. Don't worry about that. She does things her own way. She's opinionated. She is very caring, but in her own way. She's not very affectionate. Let's put it that way. And her daughter is played by Deborah Winger. Shirley MacLaine's husband dies early in the piece, when Shirley MacLaine is, I don't know, 4 or 5. Not Shirley MacLaine, Deborah Winger is 4 or 5. And this complicates their lives across the decades, because Shirley MacLaine is an attractive, mature-aged woman. Well, what does that really mean? She's probably in her 30s, I guess, at the time, and then into her 40s and 50s. But she does not lack for admirers across this film. There's a whole team of them, led by Danny DeVito in some hilarious cameos with him. Another guy who's trying way too hard and really not landing the plane. And eventually Jack Nicholson, who is a retired astronaut, of all things, living next door. The film's set in Texas, so there's a real Southern American feel to this. Danny DeVito rolls out a Southern American accent, quite noticeably, and it really suits Deborah Winger, that territory, because she has that natural twang to her voice. But anyway, it's a complicated look at their relationship, and Deborah Winger is playing I think, definitely younger than her age for part of the film, the early part, where she's sort of like in her late teens, trying to smoke joints in a room and get away with it, those sort of things, before getting married to Flap. That's his name, believe it or not, Flap. He's played by Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels' pretty much earliest recognizable role. He had been in 2 or 3 films before this, but this is really the one where he gets a lot of good screen time. They get married against the wishes of Shirley MacLaine. She's very much against Jeff Daniels this whole film, from start to finish, pretty much. Doesn't think he's good enough and lets him know. She doesn't hold back at all. And that complicates the relationship between her and Deborah Winger. So she is a bit controlling, but it's comes from a place of love. And Deborah Winger is just being Deborah Winger, really. It's sort of very similar to her character in Officer and a Gentleman. She's trying to build her own identity and definitely her own marriage and do things her way. She doesn't really resent her mother's influence or her daily phone calls, even when Jeff Daniels and Deborah Winger move away to Iowa for a job opportunity for Jeff Daniels. He's like an English professor, and so it's a testy but interesting relationship. They both care for each other, but they confront each other a lot and argue, and that's how it goes along. So, and the marriage between them, Daniels and Winger, is complex because there's a lot of pressure on it, financially, and they both get tempted by other people. Interestingly enough, by John Lithgow, in Deborah Winger's case. Some great Lithgow moments in this film. I always love seeing him come into films. He always adds something off the wall, whether it's a bad guy, like in Cliffhanger or Blowout, or films like that, or Raising Cain, of course, or just as an awkward sort of shambling good guy who's got a good heart. He's got a really good range, and such an 80s guy. Anyway, we follow their life events across this period of a decade or a bit more, and learn a lot about them. They learn a lot about each other. They go through some good times, some bad times, and just like life, right? It's directed by James L. Brooks. Now, this guy is really well known in Hollywood, especially across the 80s, but also into the 90s. He had a really, really great 80s. He had this, and Broadcast News were the big ones for me from that decade. Broadcast News is that's a banger. I'd forgotten how good that film was. And into the 90s, of course, he comes out with As Good as It Gets, again with Jack Nicholson starring in that one, not supporting like he is in this. Plenty of other great work, but those ones, really the ones that stood out for me and that I've got fond memories of. What James L. Brooks does really well is build these emotional environments, these emotional worlds. And people aren't just good or bad. They're textured, they're layered. They act as normal people do. They contradict themselves. They're funny or they're cruel. They're warm and selfish. They show all sides of themselves in his films. There's usually a fair bit of comedy, but it's comedy. It's like relatable comedy. It's not like Dumb and Dumber comedy or sophisticated comedy. It's just comedy where you think, oh yeah, I've done that, or I can relate to that. Or it's relationships comedy about everyday things or quirky little things that happen in relationships. Messy, sense of life that's messy but understandable. Human, not neat, just lived in, right? That's what James L. Brooks brings, and he does it so well time and time again. There's some there's some great performances in this. For me, Deborah Winger just again, what might have been for her. I don't know enough about her career personally to know why it didn't really work out. I mean, look, if you ask any actress if they could have this film, An Officer and a Gentleman, in their locker, they'd take it, I reckon. When you add into that Urban Cowboy, which I think was a fantastic film and another great performance from her, even in films that aren't as loved but had their own place, like Black Widow, even Betrayed with Tom Berenger. I've got good memories of that film. I'll have to check that out. She showed up in all sorts of things, but she was never as good as this early '80s run. Whether she just made interesting but not wrong choices, but films that didn't land as well as a whole. She's just such a great actress. She brings this earthiness to me and relatability, and she's funny. She's got a great laugh. I've probably said it before, but she's someone that I'd love to meet at a barbecue. She just looks natural in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Maybe she looks like someone you could have a lot of fun with, and wouldn't be too judgmental in the films. I don't know what she's like in real life, but that's what I get from her in the films. And like I said, this performance is very similar to the character in Officer and a Gentleman, really unforced, like she's just reacting as she would. And she's the centerpiece of the film for me. Shirley MacLaine is definitely perfectly cast as a difficult, controlling mother, who over time loosens up, and Jack Nicholson helps a lot with that. She's tough and critical and got a harsh tongue and emotional for sure, but she's honest. That's what comes through to me. And even when she's at her worst in this, there's something something definitely human about it. And she reminds me of so many people I've known in life. So I think it'll be the role that Shirley MacLaine's remembered for. I hadn't seen her in too many other things. I was thinking about it. I think this sort of typecast her for me, and the films that I saw after this and around this time all had a similar kind of dimension where she was in control or a really bossy, dominant person in films. But then I just had a quick squeeze back in her career and realised I'd seen her in a couple of early films like The Apartment with Jack Lemmon, and what else? Ocean's 11, the original one. I've seen that. And The Trouble with Harry, the Hitchcock film, which was one of her first films back in the mid-50s. And I haven't seen that film for a long time, but I remember when I saw it thinking, oh my God, that's Shirley MacLaine. That's that woman that I've seen, that bossy woman in films like Guarding Tess, or, films like that in the 80s and 90s where, you forget, or I forget, that these people were young once, and she really brings it in The Trouble with Harry. She's fantastic and really, really natural, and yeah, I'll have to watch that one again. Jack Nicholson. All right. I got to control myself and not go too far into the Jack Nicholson rabbit hole. That'll be used in other pods, but suffice to say, Jack Nicholson was one of the first movie stars, actors, because he's both, right? He's both. Some people are one or the other. He's both. That I just thought, right, this guy is a god. I can relate to this. Well, not relate. I just thought he was the coolest dude ever. Plus, he was a great actor. And it wasn't just on screen. I'd see him in the crowd at LA Lakers games and acting like an everyman, and just he seemed to have normal appetites in life. But I've since found out he was a voracious reader and a really cultured guy, and Probably goes against type in the way that he's portrayed in films and that he portrays himself in interviews. Um, the more I find out about Jack, the more I like. Anyway, he he steals this film for me, and that's inevitable when you realize what I've just said about him. He's so awesome. He's this retired he's this retired astronaut living next door to Shirley MacLaine for a while. They don't meet for a while, and then they do meet, and it's just one of those natural meetings. And he seems to be the exact opposite of what she's looking for. He's just open. He gets drunk a lot, and he chases younger women, and he doesn't seem to work. He just swims in his pool and walks around with his beer gut hanging out of his top and wears shorts that are too short. And this is one of the earliest times where Jack Nicholson sort of started to let himself go a bit. You watch his films from the 70s and even the early 80s in things like The Shining and The Postman Always Rings Twice. He's still pretty svelte, or he's not got a belly on him. This is the first time I can think that he had a bit of a paunch, and he plays it. Like, this is the cool thing about this guy. He doesn't try and hide it. He probably accentuates it, actually. And the scenes with him and Shirley MacLaine are the best things for me in this film. And I actually could have just had a separate film focusing on their relationship. So I could have had it flipped where the Deborah Winger and Jeff Daniels characters are minor and they just pop in and out, and we get, 75% Jack and Shirley MacLaine, because he's just so good. He's so funny, but just so upfront. He's a flirt, and but he's got a good heart too, and he really cares for her. He's just the best. He just shifts the energy whenever he's on the screen. He's so watchable. I watched this film with my parents last night, and I said afterwards, like, other actors probably love working with him, but they have to recognize that when he's in a scene with them, everyone's just looking at him. I don't care who he's with. He just steals it. Anyway, Jeff Daniels too, he's really good in this. It's a perfect role for him because he's kind of pushed to the outskirts, and that's kind of his energy, like he doesn't look like a conventional film star. He's tall, he's got that big chin, he's sort of earnest looking, and he comes across as naive in the films, and that's he's carved out a career doing that, being a dependable sort of guy. Although in this one he does go off the reservation a little bit in various ways. But he's just someone that's always been there in films. I've never really noticed him. But he puts in a really good performance here. And I had a look at his career as well, and he went on to be in a couple of Woody Allen films. And, of course, Something Wild in '86. I love that film. That's one that I'll try and rewatch at some point and do a pod on, because it's a zany, really, really mid-'80s kind of film where normal kind of people like him or characters will put up with zany people, in that case Melanie Griffith, or there was a whole bunch of films like that. The Scorsese film After Hours, Into the Night with Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer, even Body Double. This sort of idea that normal people can get swept up into extraordinary situations with wild people. Blue Velvet, another one, a bit darker, but you get the vibe that I'm saying. That mid-'80s period, that this became a real trope in films, and Jeff Daniels was the perfect straight man for that sort of thing. Of course, Jeff Daniels, when he does pass away, will be remembered for Dumb and Dumber, I think, and he's fantastic in that. I actually thought he was kind of better than Jim Carrey in those films. That's a big call, I know, but he sort of came out of his shell and just he could play dumb really well. But I do think that that's what he'll be remembered for, and that's kind of a shame in a way, because he was a better actor, and in this kind of period, I feel like he was in his element. This film, when I think about it, there were a whole bunch of films around this time that kind of looked at families, the family dynamic in an adult way, and didn't. I mean, I do think anyone can kind of watch this film from, I don't know, mid-teens, early to mid-teens, depending on the person, up to like my parents' age last night. They loved it. My mum stayed awake for this film. That says a lot. I think she stayed awake for all of it. That is like what, 1 in 10 films maybe. So I think there is a broad range for this film, but I think the film was made for adults. There's a lot in this film that is, you have to really be an adult, I think, to understand it. Families breaking up, tough situations you're dealing with, relationships, sex. And let's talk about sex. I didn't expect or remember that this film is really sexual, but it's not stylized. It's not Hollywoodized. It's just treated in an everyday, humorous, enjoyable way, the way it should be, right? That's what sex is. It's just part of life. It can be awkward, can be funny, awesome, can be, in the front of most people's minds for most of the time, in conversations, jokes, underlying everything without being explicit. And that's what it is in this film. It's just there and it's dealt with. Especially with Jack Nicholson's character, but increasingly with Shirley MacLaine's character and Deborah Winger for sure. It just feels honest, and it's sort of Europeanized, if that's, I've just made a word up in this film, that it's just dealt with frankly and honestly, and you don't often get that in an American film, especially at this point in time. So it's there in the forefront, and it drives a lot of the plot in the film, and it gives us a lot of laughs as well. So it makes the film really feel alive, or it did for me. And that's what, on the rewatch / first time watch, oh God, I don't know. Anyway, the film felt really alive and felt like real life rather than movie life. I don't think there wasn't anything in this film that really made me think, it's a dramatic film. It just, most of it could have happened and does. That's what I liked about it. I think that comes from Larry McMurtry's influence. He wrote the novel that this film's based on, and he made a career out of doing that. He wrote the Lonesome Dove series of novels, which I've got here somewhere and haven't got around to yet. The Last Picture Show, which I have read and stands up to that film, which says a lot, because that film had a big influence on me when I saw it, and that's one that I'll hopefully get to do in this pod too. It's extraordinary. Kicked off a few careers, that film. So he's really good at this stuff. He's really good at constructing characters that feel lived in and real. And that's what this movie does. So it was a great pairing of McMurtry's material with James L. Brooks's direction and style, and the performances that those professionals bring. So at the end of the day, really well written film, anchored by strong performances, and I think it's a reminder of how powerful this character-driven writing can be when it's allowed to breathe. And this film really proved that you don't always need concept or style or high concept plotting or twists and turns. Life just gives you that. If you just observe what's going on in everyday life, I think you can get that. And it's just about people at the end of the day. So I think if you enjoy those films that I talked about that were made around this time, I didn't talk about them. I talked about characters being put in extraordinary situations in terms of Jeff Daniels. So what I was going to say and forgot to is that there are a whole bunch of films made around this time looking at families breaking down. This film really reminded me of The World According to Garp, the Robin Williams film that came out the year before. Also, Ordinary People was another one. Tender Mercies with Robert Duvall. Even Kramer versus Kramer. And then The Big Chill as well. films about adult situations made for adults that kids often ended up watching too and enjoying and getting something out of. So it was a real niche there for a while, and then I don't know, it changed into something else and got darker maybe, or dumbed down. Not sure. Anyway, loved it. Highly recommend it. You know what? It's free on YouTube at the moment, and it's a really good cut. It's like what YouTube does sometimes. They put these really good films on for free, and they're not where someone's uploaded it. It's where YouTube have bought the rights for it, and they use it obviously to get you in there watching some of their movies. So I did notice that there's other films on there of really high caliber, like Chinatown, for example, or really good older films, but high quality. So yeah, check it out and see what you think if you haven't seen it before, and if you have, it's probably time for a rewatch. All right, glad you listened in to this. Hope you enjoyed it, and catch you next time.